to Financial Insider Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Gray, CPA. My guest today is Scott Hazlett. Scott is a California attorney and CPA who practices in the areas of taxation, real estate planning, financial problem resolutions, and 1031 exchanges. He's a certified specialist in taxation by the California State Bar Board of Legal Specialization. I got it all out. And he's also a qualified intermediary for tax-deferred exchanges. Scott previously worked with Pricewaterhouse, today PricewaterhouseCoopers, and has been a CPA for over 25 years. Been an attorney for nearly 15 years. He's graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in their business school and from Taft University School of Law, and now he has his own law firm. And in a past life, interesting to know, Scott was a sports writer covering Major League Baseball, National Football League, and other sports. So that's kind of fun. Okay, Scott, thanks for being my guest today.
Well, it's a great honor to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so today, Scott and I are going to be talking about a subject he's done a lot of work in, and I've also done quite a bit, and that is related to short sale and foreclosures. In fact, I'm calling it the short sale and foreclosure wars because that's the way that it feels as we come into these people, having these people come into us from the battlefield out there in California, and actually some from other states. It's been a really tough time.
Yeah, I've had over 300 individuals and families consult with me in the last 2+ years with the basic story of my house is worth less than the mortgage balance. Mm-hmm. Or I might be behind, I might be not behind, I might be thinking about getting behind, I lost my job, I might lose my job. Basically, what do I do now? I got tax questions, legal questions, real estate questions, mortgage questions, debt questions, bankruptcy questions, and social questions. Okay, what are we going to do about our home? Where are we going to live? That kind of thing. Then very fascinating.
Oh yeah,
very fascinating.
Really a tough, very challenging time that we've been going through the last few years. Related to this is a huge area, folks, and so I've never backed away from huge areas. Just be aware that we're just sort of scratching the surface, hitting some highlights. And again, this is intended to be the beginning of a continuing conversation that you're going to have with other advisors, including possibly a bankruptcy attorney,
right.
Real estate attorney, tax accountant, and so forth. So anyway.
To illustrate your point, I had a call in a discussion with a client last week who said, and I was quoted in a magazine article, and I try to help them get the right quotes and so forth. Uh-huh. And she had read a quote in there and she applied it verbatim to her situation, and it was wrong because her situation wasn't exactly like the quote. Uh-huh. And so one of the things about foreclosure, short sales, et cetera, whether you're talking to the real estate agent or your accountant, or somebody you just met in a bar, or whatever the case may be, there's a bunch, and the internet is really great for fertilizing things, yes. And I use that term loosely.
Yes.
There's a lot of misinformation out there about things and the way they should be and so forth. The state laws vary, situations vary greatly, the strategies don't fit all situations. I find there's some common themes, but everybody's situation is a little bit different, and you cannot kind of copy off your neighbor's notes. Well, my neighbor did this and that, and they never paid. Well, and they may have some fact that you don't know about, and your situation may be quite a bit different. Right. So that's where it gets the start of the discussion.
So a couple of things then. One is, of course, you're not going to find your answer in today's show. We're going to be sharing some information to help. The other is, though, that you mentioned that there are differences between the states.
Yes.
And so we're California practitioners. We're fairly familiar with how the California laws work, but there are big differences. And so it may well be that, like you may be a California person that happens to own Florida real estate. You may need to consult with a Florida real estate or bankruptcy attorney
Correct.
to really help to get the correct answer for your situation.
Right.
All right, Scott. Well, with all that long introduction, how
Yeah.
did borrowers get into this mess?
You know, I wrote I wrote an article for the local bar magazine in Contra Costa, talked about the composite borrower, and it seemed like your house was worth 100, you bought it for 100, no money down, it went up to 200, your mortgage consultant came to you and said, well, geez, you know, it's the American way to borrow, you borrowed the money, you paid off some debts, it went up again, now your loan's at 450, now your loan's at 700, and the original price is 100, and it's just going like crazy. And then you got a loan that you couldn't really handle, no document loan, they call them liar's loans, any combination of those things. And then the bottom fell out of the values of the property because they kept going up only because loans were more readily available. So now we have a situation where many homeowners have a value that is quite a bit less than their mortgage because at one time they were equal or approximate in value.
Yeah, okay. Now, real estate salespeople often promote short sales as the best alternative when the borrower is underwater. Is that true?
Yeah, well, let's talk about what underwater means. Underwater is a situation where the home value is, let's say, 100 and the loan is 150 or 300 versus 350, whatever the case is. There's, for those people that really want to exit the property, and we, you know, you can go on and on about on a different program about note mods and government programs and all this, but we're talking today about basically exiting the property. When anytime you want to get rid of a property, you sell it. So if you want to sell it or get rid of it if the value is less than the loan, you can't just sell it and pay off the loan. There's going to be a deficiency. So in my example here, 100 value, 150 loan, what's going to happen to that 50 deficiency? What's going on there? So if you want to sell the property, called a short sale because you will be short.
You won't have enough to pay the mortgage from the proceeds.
Correct. So the lender will have to give its consent to say, okay, here's our consent, you can sell the property for 100 and so forth and pay the commission and whatever. By contrast, if you don't go in that way, and let's just assume you have one loan only, forget the two loan situation, but you have one loan only, if you let the property go on foreclosure, you'll just lose the property under California law generally. You'll lose the property, this deficiency will go away, et cetera. That's sort of a broad general rule under what's called the non-judicial foreclosure rules.
Okay.
So what's the difference? You're going to lose the property and you're getting no money out of it. Okay, you're not going to pay, you're not going to get any money, so what's the difference? Well, the difference, and this is what the real estate people often cite, is your credit rating will be better, or should I say less worse, if you short sell, because it shows sort of a compliance mode versus a foreclosure is just, you just punt the ball away and you don't really participate. The reality is every situation is a little bit different, and a short sale is not always the panacea that it's cracked up to be, either for credit or for other reasons.
Okay. Now, I've heard that, okay, actually this is something we talked about before, maybe you know more about what's happened since, that Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, they were saying that there's going to be a penalty if the homeowner just walked away.
Right.
So
let's talk about this credit issue. So let's assume, again, we're comparing and contrasting foreclosure and short sale.
Yeah.
A short sale will have a credit score impact, a significant one. It will be reported as a compromised debt. You did not pay as agreed, because that's what...
It's a deficiency.
Yeah, so you didn't pay as agreed. A foreclosure will be all of that, plus it'll say foreclosure. It'll have the big red F on your report. Okay, so Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, in some sort of policy thrust, if you will, are saying, we want everybody to sort of play ball with us. We'd like to have all the homeowners submit or try to short sell the property versus doing a foreclosure, because it's sort of easier on us and so forth. And it demonstrates a willingness to be compliant. So for those people that just do foreclosure and just walk away strategically, sometimes people call it, they just walk away, we're going to say, that person can't get a loan from us or through a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, a so-called conforming loan, for 7 years, for 4 years, whatever the case may be. To that I say, and to anybody considering this, I always ask the question, do you really care? Because some people are never going to buy a home again. Either they're older, or they're younger, or their children have left, or they're going to have new children, or whatever the case may be. They're just not going to care. If the guidelines come down, guidelines change all the time. I submit to you that if you tell me the date when you're going to apply for a credit, for a mortgage loan in the future, I say, tell me that the guidelines are going to be on that date. And I also say you'll not be able to tell me because they're going to change. Between now and then, they're going to change.
The other thing is that there are, of course, financing alternatives. So you don't necessarily have to get a mortgage through Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. You could have a seller carry. We could have private money mortgages, which are expensive, but anyway. But sometimes even a bank doesn't have to resell through.
My old friend Ray Brown used to say GI financing, and of course you say, well, I was never a vet. And I say, no, GI means generous in-laws.
Oh, okay, there you go. All right. Now, if a lender approves a short sale, does that mean that the debt is canceled?
Not necessarily, but usually. And I also noticed you have a question, SB 931.
Yeah, so this is a new development.
So let's do two different fact patterns here. Let's say that there is one loan against the home being compromised. So let's say the sale price is 100 and the loan is 200, and the lender consents to it. If in California, if the property is 1 to 4 units, and it was an owner-occupied situation, if the lender consents to the short sale, the debt will be canceled. So you'll have 100 sale price basically, and you'll have 100 canceled debt. That's a for sure thing. And consistent with that, the short sale process requires that you apply for or petition the lender for their consent to do this short sale. They will give their consent by a letter agreement typically, and the letter agreement for that first loan will say we are going to waive our rights to any deficiency and so forth in California. Now the other fact pattern is when you have a first and a second loan. Typically in a first and a second loan, you're going to get the same treatment on the first loan. So let's say you have a value of 100, first loan is 150, second loan is 75, let's say. Your first lender says, fine, we'll let the short sale go through, we'll get some net proceeds number, it's all waived, it's all over. Second lender says, well, we want a little bit of money, so pay us $5,000 from the proceeds, but you understand that you still owe us the other $70,000. And that's kind of in their proposal, and they just kind of make that clear. Now, that's not binding on the seller, but that's their proposal. And typically, you have to go into some kind of negotiations to try to say, hey, we'll throw in some money maybe, and let's make all the 70 deficiency on that example, let's make all that go away, because we really don't want this to linger. But if it doesn't, it's not canceled. It's not canceled for tax purposes either.
Right. So we just need to be aware, and again, people are sort of led along on these things, and it may be some time before the lender comes back in a collection mode on that second mortgage.
Yeah, so let me give you the trap, and I think it runs into the next question about the Form 1099. The trap is if the real estate agent who says short sale is the best thing and so forth and so on, unfortunately, there's a conflict of interest. There's an inherent conflict because they want to get paid. They want to get a commission.
Right.
If there's a foreclosure, there's not going to be a commission. That's reality. If you go through a short sale, you're going to get these letters, particularly if you have 2 loans. It's imperative that you have an attorney read the letters, not the real estate agent. Have an attorney, an independent person, read the letters and say, what will happen to me? What will happen when this sale closes? Is there going to be any after effects? Or is there going to be a waiver? Or is there going to be a complete release and exoneration? The letters are very clear. They'll tell you whether there will be. And then you have to decide. If there's not going to be a release, then you have to decide. I've heard a real estate agent say, well, you know, once they issue the 1099-C, which is an income report, an IRS income report that says we've canceled the debt, therefore there is income to the borrower, that binds the lender. That does not bind the lender. The only thing that binds the lender is their consent to waive the thing or operation of California law, but certainly no IRS report gives any kind of a waiver in that regard.
Okay. I've heard that homeowners can get an advantage of staying in their homes rent-free with a foreclosure. Is that true?
Well, it just depends. I mean, if sometimes people, let's say they have only one loan, they actually can live in their house for a long, long time, and they get collection notices and the phone calls come and so forth. They haven't paid a payment, and I've seen situations up to 2-3 years, people not paying. And I trust that they're saving the money that they would be paying, because when they get kicked out, when the foreclosure does happen, they will lose their house, and the question is, where are you going to go? Are you going to rent, and so forth and so on?
Uh-huh.
And they'll say, well, I can't afford my payment. Well, how much can you afford? That's sort of in my view, that's a litmus test of where you're going to really live in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I'm not sure if that answered your question exactly, but until the foreclosure actually happens, you own the home and you can keep living there.
Yeah, and the point to some degree is the lenders don't really want to own these homes.
Correct.
And they don't want to have a huge inventory of them that they have to carry for a long period of time. In fact, there's an issue that if the home is empty,
yes,
that it'll be vandalized and
Correct.
so forth. So in some ways, it's to their advantage to have the current owner stay in the home for
Correct.
a period of time, really in a sense to protect the home.
Well, a good example of that is consider an area with a lot of delinquencies and a lot of foreclosures. Lenders are aware that if they just did the classic thing, foreclose and had a sale, if they did it broadly in an area, the values are just crater,
Yes.
and they're not going to get the thing. So lenders show restraint. They say, hey, we can't really handle this thing. We don't have the management manpower, and we certainly don't want to flood the market and sort of ruin our own prospects on these properties. And so homeowners are benefiting, and some of them, frankly, are taking advantage, and they're not even trying. And the question is, should they? Maybe, maybe not. That kind of thing.
So maybe it won't really be to your advantage to walk away.
Well, somebody will come and knock on the door at some point.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, but it's
Oh,
gonna.
yeah, oh yes, correct. Walking away. I mean, I've even heard of some people try to rent the property to get some cash flow. They'll move away to a different state and they'll rent the property and keep the rent.
Is there a defraud of creditors there or something?
Some have called that rent skimming. So
okay. How are government programs for loan modifications working?
in my view, I think very poorly. I mean, let me tell you what my perception of government programs. I just had a meeting just today with a guy who came in and said, well, the lender, in his view, the lender should be compelled by law to negotiate this transaction with me. And I had to remind him, it is a private contract between you and the lender. There is no government mandate, and there's certainly no law that forces them to take a write-down. There is political pressure, certainly. HAFA, HAMP, and a number of the other ones. Those are some of the acronyms, meaning home affordable and so forth and so on. And lenders get compensated to some extent, but I don't think the compensation they get from these government programs truly compensates them for their loss. And so they're going to do like any other creditor. They're going to do the best they can and try to recover the most money. And the government programs largely are political. They're sort of a facade of the reality, that it doesn't really work.
Okay.